Okay, welcome back to more of a special edition here. What I wanted to do was just for those that are interested, just do a bit more of a deeper dive into the Dubai race itself. Unfortunately, no actual race footage, but let's go through some of the actual data. Okay, well, let's dive into the details, deep dive of the race. I'm now recording this for about the 5th time because I'm having big problems with OBS. So, excuse me, this time around. So, well, obviously start with Strava, where else? So, with Strava, I'm also using Source for Strava, a free add-on. Gives you a whole bunch of extended stats that you can look at above and beyond what you get in the normal Strava. And it's free, although you can donate to them as well. Now, if we see here, my average power for the whole race was only 211 watts, which for me is 3 watts a kilo, which is fully zone 2 for me with my current FTP. But of course we all know that doesn't tell full story. It wasn't just a nice easy zone 2 ride for a couple of hours. We see the normalized power bumps right up to 257 watts. It's totally sort of normal road racing. You have a lot of attacks, things like that going off, so you're obviously putting down a lot of power a lot of the time. You have sections where you're relaxed and other times where you're banging down a whole load of power. My average heart rate was actually a bit higher than I would have expected for something like that, 144, but maxing out at 174 here. And my peak power, I'm no sprinter, so peak power only 756 watts, various peak powers. Nothing right home about there. It gives you an idea of a nice big flat course, the sort of powers we're doing to stay in there. So we look at zone distributions, over 50%, nearly 60% of the race was spent in zone 1 and 2. There was a lot of that race spinning away or not pedaling at all. The power of a big pack like that, and we sat in the middle of 150 people, not pedaling, doing 50 kilometers an hour. But then you see, these are the bits that hurt. These zone 5 and above, covering attacks, trying to get into breakaways, etc. And these are the things that burn your matches for later on in the races. So if we do a bit more of the analysis, we'll see here. The first part of the race, as we started off, was quite stressful, actually. It usually is at the start of these big races. So, we had over 180 people signed up, probably about 160-ish, I would say, started. And everyone's a bit nervous, but also everyone's jostling for positions. You have big teams there. We did have a neutralized start for the first K or two, but even then, people are still fighting to be right up there behind the car. And people doing silly moves left and right, just getting the feel for everything. Luckily, there were no crashes, but it was so close, I think, to some happening, and you're going at quite a pace out here. You're coming down these downhills here, 60 to 70 k an hour, 160 people. So, they're fresh legs, keen to get going. Lots of attacks going off here, constant attacks, counter-attacks, big teams out there. As people are just trying to find their place. You see here spiking up. For me, these are big power spikes. 600-700 watts, 300, 400, 500, constantly following attacks, counter-attacks. You need to stay sharp on it, even though you're a big pack. You don't want to be out the back, really, in all of these. And that was the story of this first part of the race. This first third is just attack, counter-attacks, covering it. I tried to get in a breakaway here. It's a bit more sustained, higher effort here, but it didn't last very long. Within a couple of kilometers, got caught. And this was also the section where, as I was getting caught, obviously we started the race. It was dark, so I had sunglasses on my helmet. I hadn't put them on properly by this point, even though the sun was coming up. And as we're getting caught here, I wanted to have a look at where everybody was. And my wonderful Oakley jawbreaker sunglasses fell out into the road, never to be seen again. Very sad. I've had those for many years, and I shall have to see about getting a replacement. So yeah, very unfortunate that. So once I got caught, I'd used up quite a few matches here. So from here on, I tried to stay a bit more in the pack. And of course, this was a section where then the break of the day got away. Because you had a few big teams there, quite well represented, so any breaks they weren't happy with, they were obviously shutting down. And eventually a group of 8 got away that they were happy with, so they shut down any attempts to bridge across to them, and things started to relax a bit more. So if we look back here, we see normalized powers up at basically 280 for this first section, and as we get into the middle section of the race here, normalized power comes back down to like 250, and things are a bit more relaxed along here. A couple little digs here and there. I think that was another attempt to bridge across to the break. Well, that might have been the main breakaway attempt happening there. But after all this, it just starts to be a lot easier, more relaxed. Everything calms down, the break of the day is gone, everyone's sitting, chilling, basically. These are just big, huge highways. An interesting one, as we come along here, this is where I had my big scary moment. So I heard something and looked, and I didn't know what it was, and it looked like it was a big metal rod or something that came bouncing across the highway, and came bouncing across and through my front wheel. I still have no idea what it was, but whatever it was, it bounced up, went through my front wheel, somehow didn't get trapped in there or break anything. I count my lucky stars there. Unbelievable. Managed to carry on. And the next scary moment was around here, doing reasonable speed, 40+ k an hour. And here was the first big crash that I saw of the day, and it was not far from me. I was out to the right. But basically somebody did another silly move. Just you kind of have to, in a big group, you need to move slowly. People know what you're doing. You don't want sudden, jerky movements. And somebody just kind of went very quickly over to the left. And of course, everybody else starts to do that. And people on the far left, they had nowhere to go. You had the central reservation. They didn't have anywhere else to go. So you had a touch of wheels. Somebody went down and took out a whole bunch of people. I would guess 6 to 8 riders. But it was at speed. It looked pretty nasty, the crash. Hopefully they were all right in the end, but it wasn't nice. But yeah, in your big group like that, you need to be a bit sensible about how you move around. And then after that, we came into this section here. Now here, this was another bit where we had to really, you have to really keep your wits about you. You're later on in the race, people getting tired. This section here came into sort of narrow roads, I'd say dual carriageways, a bit tighter turns. And we got really strung out here, yeah? It was kind of like single, double file of riders, really strung out. And you had to be careful not to start getting dropped, which is what happened up here. So, as we're coming out of here, luckily I had enough wits about me, but I was a bit further back than I should have been, but had got quite strung out here. But I noticed that the people in front of me were starting to drop wheels and lose the riders in front. So that's another thing, you can't just concentrate on yourself staying on the wheel in front. You need to make sure the people further in front of you are also not dropping off. And luckily I'd noticed that they were starting to drop away. There's a little bump here, and I'd realized and gave a bit of a dig here to get round them, kick round them to get back onto the main peloton up here. It was a good thing I did, because I managed to get back on and look behind, and they weren't able to stay on my wheel and dropped off. And that was a bigger split then behind. A whole bunch of people came out the back. So luckily I managed to stay in with the main pack there. But it was close, it was close. And then this little roundabout here was the next crash that happened, but it was a bit less serious, that one. Some guy, I don't know, he was out on my right and he went out really wide right. I have no idea really what was going on, because it wasn't packed, it wasn't stressful, and he just somehow touched wheel with the guy in front of him and went down. Luckily he just went down himself, there was no one else behind him, it wasn't packed. But that's nice, 4K from the finish and go down. I mean, hopefully it wasn't so bad that you could get back up and get into the finish, but yeah, that sucks. But you know, it's how it is sometimes. You're coming into the end of a race, maybe just a bit tired, not thinking straight, and you go down. Now here, as we come into the end of the race, I made a very tactical error of not being fully aware of where we were, positioning where I needed to be at various points. So as we were coming down here, I should have been pushing to be at the front towards the front of the pack. You can see our speeds here starting to ramp up. It was fast anyway, but the teams were pushing on. And as we came down here, I didn't quite realize where we were. And I really didn't, I mean, this was already starting to be a bit late with the speeds we were doing, 50k an hour to push up. But we had, coming into the finish, we had two 90-degree turns. And if you weren't up towards the front in this turn, there was no way you were going to be up there for this turn. And it's like the last 300 meters, 300 meters, it was game over. They were too tight, these turns. You just weren't going to be able to get up there. So I was way too far back. But I finished in the main group, which is the main thing. But yeah, this last bit, it was too tight to sprint properly. I tried to give it a go. I made up a couple of places, but people sitting up already, people done for the race. You couldn't get round really here. That was it. But got in safe, that was the main thing. We'll have a quick look at Exert, which is another tool I like to use. I'll do another video sometime of all the different tools I use to analyze my riding. But this is the main one that I like to look at. Main thing here being this purple line is they call it MPA, maximum power available. I think the equivalent in something like Trainer Road or Training Peaks is WBAL. Essentially it says this is what your maximum power reserves are, your battery if you will. And as you ride above your threshold power, you draw down on this power, on these power reserves. And theoretically with the model you can't go above, you can't use more than what you have in your reserves. If you do, it kind of resets the model and you have more power available. It resets the model for that. But here, as you see, these early attacks drew right down on all that power. And as you ride below threshold, you kind of replenish that power. And you see here drawing down on that for these various attacks. But later on in the race, there's a few bits where I had to put a bit of effort in. But on the whole, it's a bit more relaxed here, especially around here, chilling. This is like coming out of corners or just up the little bumps. Here's where I had to put a bit more of a dig to get back on, and then my non-existent sprint at the end here. But yeah, this is a tool I like to use. We'll dig into that in a bit more detail in another video. Here's the overall results. As we saw, there was eight people in the breakaway. This was the invitations, basically those with licenses. They did it in a 2:04, a whole minute and a half ahead of the rest of the pack. Just goes to show you, it's one, they worked really well together, and two, the teams in the main pack were fairly effective in shutting down any real chase effort. And it was a fast race this year. I mean, last year I think the winners came in 2:10. It was a 4-man break there, and the main pack came in pretty close behind, I think 10-20 seconds behind. But yeah, that's how much faster we were this year. They were coming in 6 minutes faster, and we came in 2:06. When we look through here, the men's finish, 142 finished in the end in the elites. A couple of DQs, no idea what that was for. A few didn't finish, probably caught up in the crashes. Quite a lot didn't start. But happy with that, 56th overall. As I said, if I'd been a bit smarter with my positioning, knowing where the exact finish was, the lead-in, then it probably would have been a lot higher up. But hey, finished in the main pack, that was the main thing. And qualified. Out of the age group, 40 qualified out of 197 starters. And here, I came in 7th in the age group. None of our age group were in that breakaway. So overall, I'm happy with the result. The aim was to qualify, finish there, no accident, and that was achieved. Yeah, so I have a few races coming up. Next one will be mid-April. Neusiedlersee, so another Gran Fondo. Hopefully they'll actually be able to get a bit more race footage and everything. And if you guys like this sort of analysis, I'll do some more analysis of that race as well, do like a separate video just like this one. That one's going to be quite interesting. So the Saturday is actually TT. Not really one of my strong points, but that's what I'm going to try and focus on training for. It's also a qualifier for the amateur TT World Champs. I don't really fancy my chances with that, but I'm going to give it a go. And then the Sunday is the actual Gran Fondo. So 96 kilometers, fairly flat race. But I have a bit of pressure off my shoulders now, having qualified from Dubai. So we'll be able to just go out there, do a bit more learning. And come May, get into crit season around here, local crits, get some nice footage of that. Yeah, and I'll bring some more videos of some of my training, working towards all these different goals with the big aim of the World Championships in Scotland in August. Yeah, so we'll see you next time. thanks for tuning in and watching. It will be great to hear your comments.